Today on Otaku Daikun, we'll be celebrating the absolutely beautiful art of Satoshi Urushihara, going over his works and history, as well as analyzing his style in depth. Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. I mentioned in a previous video that the true meaning of manga is a picture created at the subconscious whim of the artist. I brought it up to emphasize that no matter what happens to anime as an industry, so long as individual artists remain with a passion for the style, our fandom will always survive. After all, at the heart of this entire medium are countless brilliant artists who each have their own unique ways of using lines, shading, and color to portray what I like to call an idealized human form. Assuming this one goes well, I plan to make a series of videos celebrating the very best artists in the anime and manga style, shining a spotlight on their work and noting what makes it special. For now, I'll be sticking to well-established commercial artists in a fair use presentation, but depending on how these vids take off, I'd love to work with more independent artists on social media. You know, the kind of talent you see selling their prints at anime conventions and such. Ideally, I'd like to commission them to make pieces of Daichan and use those as an opportunity to analyze their various styles. I figured the best place to start this series would be with my absolute favorite artist, Satoshi Urushihara, a master of manga and animation, most prolific during the 80s and 90s, when anime was arguably more flashy and, dare I say, unrestricted. During the age of OVAs, when shorter animations were produced at much higher quality than televised anime, Urushihara-san made a name for himself after being an animator for Toei and eventually forming his own production company called Earthwork. As such, he was completely at the helm for the majority of his works, but he also did quite a bit of directing and character design for high-profile anime such as the classic Bubblegum Crisis, Queen's Blade, and Ikitosen. In addition to being a total boss at retro mecha designs, he's also known as the Master of Breasts, having an extensive history of adult-themed materials. In fact, almost all his works are adult in nature, and for those that aren't, he makes up for it with his own lovingly drawn doujinshi. I first encountered Urushihara-san's artwork through a short little anime called Plastic Little. It's the story of Captain Tita, a young girl who leads her crew in capturing exotic sea life to sell as pets. She finds herself saving and protecting a girl named Elise from nefarious armed forces. In other words, the cheerful and energetic Tita is pulled into a violent conspiracy, all to save a delightful friend. This anime released in 1994 and was eventually released in North America by ADV Films. I feel it's insanely underrated, especially on my anime list, by people who can't seem to appreciate the wild and wacky nature of retro anime. Sure, it's not the deepest story in the world, but it more than makes up for that with brilliant visuals and style. If you happen to be familiar with Central Park Media, the New York-based company that originally brought Slayers to the West, you may be aware of Urushihara-san's earlier OVA, Legend of Lemnir, which stars a scantily clad pair of fantasy warriors fighting against an evil wizard. From that premise alone, you may find this rather shallow, and I've even made fun of it in one of my earliest videos. But when it comes to watching more gorgeous, high-quality visuals, trust me when I say this is top tier. It's a 40-minute long rush that I recommend you watch for the style alone. Both of these OVAs are straight up ecchi, but if you want some full-fledged H, you may be interested in his 2005 OVA, Front Innocent, or Another Lady Innocent. Given the complex nature of his shading and line work, seeing it brought to life really is quite impressive, especially if you enjoy Yuri. In addition to his anime, Urushihara-san also drew a great many manga, including adaptations of his OVA series and some original stories as well, such as Ragnarok City and Shirality. His illustrations can be found in light novels as recent as 2017, so it's clear he's been at this for quite some time. His work in doujinshi is also timeless, as he takes the time to draw fan-favorite characters from other franchises, including Fate, of course. Gamers may be familiar with his art from two famous tactics RPG series, Langrisser and Growlancer. Of the two, Langrisser is a much older series that started way back on the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive. Nowadays, the best way to play these games would either be Langrisser Mobile or the modern remake of Langrissers 1 and 2 for the PS4 and Switch. Personally, I don't recommend the mobile version, because the devs have mostly replaced Urushihara-san's artwork and character designs with a new, less flashy art style. The same can be said for the remake, but that release gives you the option between modern and retro art styles, staying true to what makes Langrisser so special. As for Growlancer, it's a series with a couple of games spanning both the PlayStation 2 and PSP. We were lucky to get the main games localized in North America by Working Designs before they shut down. The key to enjoying both of these franchises is to embrace what makes classic JRPGs and their old-school tropes endearing. Surprisingly, these games are completely safe to play for both teens and adults, not like that ever stopped teenage Daikun from experiencing his full library. Now that we know a little about Urushihara-san, let's take a closer look at what makes his style so unique. As one would expect from anime designs, his characters have large, vivid eyes, but they often feature more shine and shimmer than usual. His eyelashes are thick and detailed, with lots of individual strands. Many of his characters have clearly defined noses and an extra thickness to their bottom lips. A major feature of his line work comes from scored shading, in which certain areas of shadow are depicted through rough, parallel lines. This is typically seen in the necks, noses, and other dark skin shadows. I'm sympathetic toward animators of Urushihara-style hair, as his designs are dynamic and voluminous. Tons of long strands, each with multiple lines clarifying its shape. It can be difficult to describe the techniques and feel of his proportions, but if I had to put it into words, I'd say Urushihara-san has a perfect balance between supple, rounded lines and sharp, chiseled ones. Parts of his characters look silky smooth, yet rigid in how stoic they are when posed. This is likely a marriage between his skill at drawing things like mechs, as well as Bishoujo. While I don't have a lot of his mecha designs to show, you can certainly see his insane attention to detail and technical skill with armor and swords. He doesn't shy away at all from drawing intricate details and engravings into them. The brilliance is that his lines look messy and exciting, while remaining incredibly precise. Personally, what I find most impressive with Urushihara-san's art is his shading. His works are known for their two-tiered shadows and vivid highlights. Let's start with the shadows. For the most part, he follows a fairly conventional cell shading style. This typically involves making most surfaces a solid color, then drawing in strict regions where the color is darker. The shadows become an extra layer of contour line at that point. It's a sudden, harsh transition from the base color to the shadow, which gives anime that traditional, cartoony, flat look. To add more depth, however, Urushihara-san implements a second, even darker set of shadows. Now, you'd think these darker shadows belong in more tucked-away crevices, like cleavage or armpits, and they certainly are, but a lot of times you'll also see these dark shadows between the base color and lighter shadow. Rather than being tucked away, these shadows seem to contradict what we expect from volumetric shading. It's a fantastic technique for armor, as it makes armor look more metallic and reflective, but it's quite remarkable to see on skin and hair. This, combined with highlights, makes Urushihara-san's characters look silky and glossy. Humans don't normally look like this, and I appreciate how this style makes characters seem even larger than life. The effect becomes even stronger when the highlights, which are already incredibly bright, have a glow to them. Everything combined must really contribute to his nickname, Master of Breasts, as those mounds in particular show off that vibrant luminance very well. Obviously, I couldn't let this chance slip by without talking about Urushihara-san's illustration of Rin Tosaka for the 2010 Unlimited Blade Works movie by Studio Deen. Mind you, he didn't work on that film. Rather, he just produced this promotional image drawn in his own style. It's a bit toned down from what I described before. None of Rin's shadows are scored, perhaps to give her a more feminine grace. The shadows are all mostly single layer, and the highlights aren't as bright. Specifically, the highlights around Rin's chest are also way softer, foregoing cell shading in favor of blurred orbs. It's still undeniably Urushihara's style, but maybe cranked down to like 50%. The most bizarre part of this picture are Rin's eyes. they don't look anything like what Urushihara-san typically draws. The eyelashes are all simplified into a silhouette of sorts. It loses that appeal of being a rough sketch, and the lack of extra eye shine leaves her looking a tiny bit cross-eyed. Regardless, it's still a charming image, though not quite as impressive as his NSFW art of Saber, but that had the benefit of more dynamic lighting and shiny armored gauntlets. Taking all I've said about Urushihara-san's art into consideration, I've tried to replicate his style in a drawing of Dai-chan. I'm by no means a seasoned artist, at least not with 2D drawings, but hopefully I've captured a bit of that same essence. I tried my best to incorporate those vivid highlights and two-tone shadows. Making this piece really helped me appreciate just how tough it is to create art as detailed as Urushihara-san's. Anime art appears really simplistic, and compared to more photorealistic stuff it certainly is, but that just means the placement of each line, shadow, and highlight is that much more important. The slightest deviation can make the difference between a professional's work and an amateur's. When I look at this illustration of Captain Tita, I notice that pretty much every aspect is perfect. Every fold of cloth, every anatomical curve, it's all deliberately and impeccably placed. It only looks rough and messy, but that's just to provide texture. The fact that his studio was able to turn this into animation makes it all the more impressive, as they were basically replicating this kind of image 12 times for every second in a 40-minute film. There's no way in hell I could rank such beauty as low as a 6 like my anime list has it. Personally, I feel like channels like Anime Abandon on YouTube that look at old anime to berate them like the Nostalgia Critic really do a disservice to the sheer artistry that went into them. I think it would be a dream come true to see an anime of this retro style created now in digital, blending the sensibilities of old with the technology of new. The anime that get close to this happen to be my favorite of all time. I really hope you've enjoyed my dive into the art of Satoshi Urushihara. I highly recommend you check out his work however you can. Going forward, I hope to give this kind of treatment to other beloved anime artists, and in that endeavor, I humbly ask you to comment which artists you'd most want me to cover. I can't guarantee anyone will show up in any specific order, but I'll certainly be taking your recommendations into account. Before I go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: Video Gamer 75, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Freebrick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Johnny Tsunami, Link Pendrago, Bricken, Caitlin P, Vladimir Rovna, Succubus Sakura, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!